The U.S. government announced the new BIS regulations on October the 7th. What are the main contents?
The new rules use 4 different regulatory tools to expand export controls on the sectors that the U.S. government is targeting here. And those sectors are advanced integrated circuit manufacturing, particularly the kinds of ICs that are used to support artificial intelligence and other advanced computing. The next sector is semiconductor manufacturing itself. And again, they're focused on general semiconductor manufacturing, but also the ones that are used in advanced computing, and then supercomputers. And the government is implementing these changes through a set of regulations that are called the Export Administration Regulations. These tools each create new types of licensing requirements. And what these licensing requirements do is they allow the Department of Commerce to then apply different licensing policies. So in some cases, people will try to export or transfer within China or re-export to China, and the U.S. government will then be able to decide whether to apply a denial policy, the presumption of denial, or a case-by-case review. The creation of the controls is meant really it's not a prohibition, it's a prohibition without licensing, and it's really the licensing regime that the U.S. government then uses to toggle one way or the other whether certain exports can continue. But there's 4 different types of tool. One is the item-based controls. These are described under export control classification numbers, ECCNs, and these are listed on what's called the Commerce Control List. That's part of the same Export Administration Regulations. And in that instance, the U.S. government has created several new ECCNs that are focused on both the advanced ICs themselves as well as the equipment used to make them. The next tool is called a Foreign Direct Product Rule. And these are really unusual controls. They were very rarely used in the past, but over the last several years, the U.S. government has determined that this is probably a more effective tool at trying to stop an activity that they're not interested in continuing. And so they created a new rule that basically said foreign direct products, so products that are produced outside the United States by non-U.S. companies, if they use certain software and technology, they can't send those items, those products, to Huawei either. Right. And so when they did that, that finally had the effect that the U.S. government was trying to do, which was to curtail Huawei's access to these advanced technologies. So that was a relatively successful and limited rule at the time, but they more recently expanded the foreign direct product rules in very significant ways with respect to Russia. Really, any product cannot go to military end users in Russia today. And then also there's another rule that doesn't apply to military end users in Russia. And that's been very successful, in part because the U.S. negotiated ahead of time to work with the European Union and other allies to implement very similar controls in those countries. And so these foreign direct product rules, I think it's going to be an interesting thing to see how it plays out, because it reaches out and grabs items that are not even U.S. origin, but are produced with U.S. software, technology, major components, as well as whole plants. And major components is kind of an interesting term, but you should know that major components includes even tiny things like pieces of software that are used to test semiconductors or test equipment, test beds, labs, that kind of a thing. So it's not necessarily a big item. It's just any item that's necessary for the production of a semiconductor. The third type of control is an end use and end user control. And these are kinds of catch-all rules. They become more popular as well within regulators who are trying to basically come up with more targeted types of export controls. So the European Union has different end-use and end-user controls. The United States has end-use and end-user controls. And what these are is they're kind of catch-alls. Basically, they prohibit any exporter that's exporting items that are subject to U.S. jurisdiction. They prohibit them from being able to export those items to counterparties in China if they know that they'll be used, for example, in supercomputers or in advanced semiconductor facilities that are involved in advanced manufacturing, IC manufacturing. And the fourth tool is the most extraordinary one. It's the control on U.S. persons. The U.S. person concept is a broad one, and these are really kind of extraordinary controls. Up until this point, they've only been applied in situations where the U.S. was trying to control U.S. person involvement in the production of weapons of mass destruction, chemical and biological weapons, ballistic missile technology. And what they basically, the reason why this rule has been, the explanation the U.S. government has given is that they're now seeing with the military civil fusion policy in China, we do not want U.S. persons located anywhere in the world involved in those activities. So those are 4 tools. They are a significant expansion. I don't think these are changing anytime soon. I think this is a new vector of U.S. National security, and I don't see the United States changing its course on these controls in any time in the near future.